What is going on with Bitcoin? Are we in a bull market? Are we in a bear market? Where is Bitcoin going right now? Welcome to Empire Trading Academy, guys. Hit the like, hit the subscribe if you like what you hear and see. Let's get right into this. Technicals first, on-chain data next. First and foremost, our macro picture, guys. You know that we've been looking at this fractal, more of unconventional technical analysis, but we've been looking at this fractal, right, going back 2019 into 2020, looking very, very similar. We know that we've had this test here, impulse move, where those match up the numbers, impulse move, retrace or correction back underneath our support line. We flip our resistance into support, two distribution tops, followed by two tests of support here. And we know that we have seen this almost identical thing here. We have our support, impulse move, retrace underneath our support, and a flip of resistance into support, two distribution tops with two tests of support here as well. If we also go ahead and draw our trend line, we have this descending resistance that's mapping out these tops here. It's going to map out the top of our impulse move and then the top of our first distribution top. So 2 and the first distribution top. So here we have 2 and our first distribution top. And you know that our point on 5, our first test of 5, we go ahead and we test that, okay? We go ahead and we test that as support now once we flip that, and you can see that we've done that same exact thing. Our second distribution top goes and flips this resistance now into support. We get that initial test after the breakout. We have some consolidation and we have this kind of slow grind up into our parabolic move. And then we have the same exact thing here. We have our second distribution top, breaking of that resistance. Now we're getting the retest of support, finding the exact same support at this ascending trend line, which is exactly what we had here. On both points on 5 also, guys, if we look, we have it's crazy similar, extremely similar action on the RSI. Right. And so we have kind of like this slow grind up in this upward using kind of grinding against this as a support. And we have this bullish momentum on our RSI. Right. And we get this if we zoom in a little bit more, even to a T, guys, it's kind of crazy. If we look at this, we have this tracing first here in this little range, and then we have kind of like this bump before we come back and retest the support. And we have this range, we have this bump again, and then we've come down and retest that support. And we can look at that also on our RSI as well. It shows pretty cleanly there. This is our strength, right? We have a decently big move right off of this range, and we see that in the RSI here. And what do we get here? That same exact thing. After a test of the support, this slow grind up, and then a big bump up, and then a retest. And so it's amazing how similar this is. Obviously, we do not want to trade just based on fractals, but if we match up our basic or more conventional means of technical analysis, guys, and then we go ahead and we can use a fractal as part of our evidence for whatever our thesis is, then we can go ahead and definitely take that into account, right? So that's that for that fractal, guys. Now, if we zoom in a little bit into this more recent structure, we've been tracing around in this range, right? This trading range right here between 52 and 57,000. Okay, and we've just been ranging between there. A retest of it more recently, and then we're looking to hold this again, this ascending trend line. Okay, everything is looking relatively good here. We're going to see this is a smaller time frame range that we've created. We've had our supply zone right here, our more macro demand zone here, and we're going to see if we can go ahead and flip this. We're going to see if we can flip that. If we go to the 30-minute really quick, if we're looking at this, let's go ahead and we'll retrace this really quickly. See if we can get some moves. I actually want to take it off of this move here, okay? And if we look, bouncing off of this, we use the 328 as a retracement, and it's possible that we get something. If we're looking at our waves, possible that that was the one, this is the two, a longer retrace or a longer correction here on 3, and then we go ahead and we have a 5th move up to retest this range. Okay, now this 5th range, it could retest this area, and then we get something, another correction. You know that if we look back at that fractal, we basically just grind along here for a few days, right, before we have some seller exhaustion, and then we go ahead and we make our way up. But I would look for a fifth wave to end at the top of this range. And possibly we get an extension in that 5th, and we go ahead and we flip that and turn this into support. We tried once before here, failed, and that's why we got this retest of our more macro support or demand zone. But it looks like we're trying again, and so we'll see if we can get that. So technicals, guys, everything's still looking good, especially if we're looking at that fractal. And if we zoom out overall, it's very hard to not be bullish, right? If we're looking at this, we're still putting in higher highs and higher lows after our July low, right? I got a message on or a comment on TikTok the other day, right, saying basically, hey, we've been in a wake up, we've been in a bear market for the last 7 months, and so a lot of people get very emotional during these times. And so if we look back 7 months, right, we're looking at roughly June, beginning of June, okay, we're at $30,000 or under. We just hit all-time highs, okay, and most recently we've had a correction off of that high, okay, and still putting in a higher low. Okay, so we're still putting in higher highs, we're still putting in higher lows, and we just went from 30,000 up to 68 to a new all-time high. Okay, I don't know anybody in the world that would consider that a bear market, right? And so we need to look at these things in an unbiased way. When we have points of invalidation, guys, if we have a support or a move or anything like that that has been invalidated, then you go ahead and you close out of your position and you reassess. That's trading. Trading is not being right or wrong, really, right? It's about, you have a thesis and you go ahead and you manage the position as price action unfolds. So that's it on our technicals, guys. If we go ahead and look on chain, because in our opinion, once again, we're going to be proved correct in the macro sense, just like we were here, just like we were here. And again, we're looking to have our on-chain data really support our technicals in a macro sense, and that we're going to continue this bull run. Okay. And if we are once again proven correct at this point, on-chain in my book is an absolute invaluable tool in whatever way or fashion you need to get a hold of on-chain data. Do it. Okay. We just dropped the on-chain course, on-chain analytics course. Go check that out, guys. We have the tier 3 metrics update, giving you the deepest level of on-chain metrics, updates from me personally, video updates. And so any way that you can get this and sign up for yourself, try and learn it yourself. And we have tools to help you guide you through that, but they're virtually invaluable, guys, in the macro. So let's head on over. Let's look at that. Looking at exchange balances. Again, we've had a decrease. Okay. We've had a decrease off of that. I want to bring up one thing. So one thing that we were looking for, that we talked about yesterday on our social media, we were looking at this when we had this distribution top in March. We had this downward trend line. Okay, we were seeing decreasing Bitcoin on exchanges coming off, right? And then we kind of had this bump and run, and so we had this bump or this downward set that was a further kind of cup and handle, right? And then we broke out of this resistance. So we broke out of this resistance, and that's when we saw major selling. So we had kind of this big inflow that broke through this resistance, inflow of coins onto exchanges. We saw this big sell-off, right? Which ultimately led to a $64,000 to $29,000 retracement. All right. And so we were looking at that very similar again, right? We had these two distribution tops, downward trend in our testing this as resistance, right? And then we did briefly break through that, but we've pulled under this again. And then in the last few hours, we actually have continued to decrease there. So that's a positive. All at major support levels. And then you'll see that other on-chain data is increasingly bullish as well. So this most recently continuing to come off. And then also if we zoom out, guys, right? So if we zoom out, put on day, if we zoom out, this just continues to decrease, adding to the supply squeeze. Okay. If we look at our MVZ score, guys, so we're looking at basically how the price of Bitcoin, and is it over or undervalued? And it's based on the realized price of the average coins, okay, when they're sold, and that average price, okay. And so this gives us roughly tops and bottoms of markets. Now, you'll notice that in every single end of bull run, right, we get these big spikes in this metric in our parabolic moves toward the end, and we blow past this, okay? That gives us an idea of this euphoria at the end, right, where nobody thinks that it can go down. And so we have this metric spike up big, okay, even in this mid-cycle. You'll notice this cycle, we never got that. Right. And so we flashed up into the red very briefly, but we got the distribution top and a sell off after that. And so very much a mid cycle, not a typical blow off top. And so this is an indicator that we believe is not giving us a bear market picture, and that this is just a mid-cycle top, or a local top here at 64,000 and now 68,000. And so this is helping us to picture or depict a continued bull run. Now, if we look at, guys, if we look at what's going on this cycle, things are definitely changing, right? Things are definitely changing. This shows us that we're changing. We are way down here. Okay, this supports our thesis that we've restarted this bull run. We're way down here in our metric. Okay, nowhere near, let's call it a top, right? Although we just hit all-time highs, right? And so this isn't matching up, and so a restart of this cycle is just what I would call it. Is seeming to match up with a lot of the indicators that we are seeing. And so you have that. Now, if we go over to our stock to flow, right? So this is something else that is changing a little bit, right? And so we get into this, I'm going to call it dirty green. All right. So we get in this kind of nasty green, right? When we're finding a top. And so we're very, very close to that green, right? However, we're nowhere near, we're actually one standard deviation below our stock to flow model. Okay. Normally we're one above, or even one plus above, okay, at the end of these cycles. And so we are way, way below. And if we're looking at timeline again, the days until halving are now being it's getting closer, right? Almost similar to the very first years of Bitcoin, right? And so if we have our kind of dirty green over here, right, before we get into the yellow, we only have up after that, right, into orange, and we're looking at I don't know, roughly maybe 500 days until the halving. right? And so we get in here in 2012, very, very short bear cycle. And in my opinion, is probably more closely what we will get in this run, and possibly into 2023 is when we ultimately see a top, almost what we saw here. Okay, so this is something, the stock to flow has not been invalidated in any way. If we start to become 2+ standard deviations and stay out for, let's say, 6 months, that would be a point of invalidation. But things are definitely changing. All right. Next, guys, our big guys, whales, number of addresses balances of at least 10,000. We've had a retest of this recent high from the beginning of December. Absolutely no selling from these guys. Remember, these guys will never sell into weakness, right? They're only going to sell into strength. And so there's no more distributing of their coins. Okay, this is extremely positive for the bulls. One thing I want to look at is in our short-term futures open interest, guys. So if we look at our perpetuals first, these are non-expiring futures. Okay, this is how we can measure short-term leverage in the Bitcoin market. Okay, and if we look at this metric in our latest correction in price action, guys, right? In our latest correction from 51,000, right, down here to 46, 45 and change, really none of the leverage has been cleaned out. Okay, so it's something that we're watching very closely. Okay, so because you know that we've been talking about this big increase in this metric and in the leverage in the system, but in this correction, nothing has been cleaned out. Okay, and so it's something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on. Could be something very similar to this. We had further downside right here in our price action in July, but really no more cleaning out of our futures or our leverage. All right. And so that's perpetual. If we look at our open interest, so these are going to be expiring. These were cleaned out a little bit more back to the levels before we made that move up and people started to get more bullish, which this is good to see. So we'll continue to monitor that. And lastly, guys, we're looking at percent miner revenue from fees. So this mass exodus of miners from China has really kind of deviated from, has allowed this metric to deviate from the norm. So normally any sort of big moves, okay, are shown by this metric with big spikes, or at least decently increasing in this metric, right? So the only times that you'll notice flats, right? So if we have a flat here, that's a bear market. Okay, you'll notice here this flat, we're in a bear market, right? And downtrend, okay, during that time. We're flat here and we're in an uptrend. So this is definitely not the norm. The miners leaving has definitely taken a toll or just deviated this metric a little bit. But again, this shows, and it could just be part of that, right? But this shows that our cycle is definitely changing, just like we showed with stock to flow. And then if we just look at where we are in price action and time-wise of these 4-year cycles, but we're flat here, indicative of a bear market, although price action is going up. And so the reset of this cycle thesis matches with this as well, in my opinion. And so we want to see, as price action continues, we want to see this metric continue to rise. Okay, just so we can get back on track to be able to use this metric more efficiently. All right, guys, so that is what we're looking at. If you guys have any questions, please email us, message us, go check out EmpireTradingAcademy.com. All sorts of premier trading tools, ones that you will find nowhere else. Again, let us know if you have any questions. Hit the like, hit the subscribe if you like what you saw. We'll see you in the next video.